So this is my laptop, which I've had trouble with, but I won't go into that. And this is the Mighty software, Motorsport Electronics Integrated Tuning Environment. I think that's what it stands for. And this is the effectively the injection map, and over here is the ignition map. I haven't touched the ignition. I've left it exactly default as it came to me, but I have been tweaking the injection, the mixture, if you like. And these figures here, which are varying between kind of 40, 70, even 80, even 100 in the extreme case over here, showing the relative amount of fueling according to VE. Now VE is volumetric efficiency, which is a measure of how full the cylinders are compared to what they could be, which in turn is a measurement of throttle opening and engine speed. I think that's the way to understand it. Anyway, I'm far from expert in this, so I've just been driving around, fiddling and seeing what happens. But as I said, I'm a little bit old school, and I'm also a little bit paranoid. So, having had my reasonably long drive test yesterday, I thought, I'll tell you what I'll do. First thing this morning is I'll take a spark plug out. Now the spark plugs are actually quite hard to get at least they are on the right hand side, but fortunately on the left hand side, which is over there, that one is easy to get at. Anyway, here it is. So this is spark plug number, oh flipping it, do I even know? It's always confusing on V engines. Spark plug number, the forward one on the left hand side bank. But anyway, I think that considering it's tuned by ear, eye, with a little bit of looking at the computer, that looks reasonably sensible. It doesn't look like it's about to burn out or anything. And that is at least promising enough to risk some more driving around. So the engine is stone cold. It hasn't started up today at all until now. So let's see how well it does that. So as you saw, it started really well, but it does have a tendency to stall. It gets better when it's a bit warmer, but it's obviously not quite right. So I'm just going to start it again, and I'm going to take the precaution. Of inserting a foot to manage the throttle. Let's make sure it's connected. There it is. Now we have a new problem. The problem that was not the throttle, it was the brake pedal. It sounds almost smooth, eh? A little bit on the idle here, which is probably related to my stalling problem in some respects. But it sounds pretty decent actually. It does sound pretty decent. And the tapping noise that was coming from the timing chain, which I speculated is something to do with my VVT, with the bonnet shut, you can't hear it anyway. I seem to have got rid of my tapping noise. I was listening all over the engine, and I thought the noise is coming from the fuel injectors. So I've changed from batch fire to sequential. The noise is gone. Following the last little segment, quite a lot of investigation happened because clearly the engine wasn't running properly. In fact, even with the VVT switched off again, it still wasn't running properly. So, as I say, some investigation was required, and that had revealed, it turns out, a bit of a problem. Now, how did I go about establishing what the problem was? And I will demonstrate that. So here we have the situation. The engine appears to be running very, very roughly, and so one of the things I did was to put the management into a kind of test mode. And one of the things I can do with the Mighty software is this. I can put the fuel injectors into a test mode, which is very useful. If I can actually find outputs. There it is. Okay, so here we have let's get you a little bit of a better view. Right, so here we have the Mighty software, and I'm just tweaking you here, as you can hopefully see, we've got outputs, injectors and various things, but most importantly was the fuel injectors. So I went through the following process. So injector outputs, which are set to obviously injector, but you can choose from a list that includes this one, test, with a slow toggle, and I'm going to have to take you right over there, I think. Can you hear it? that sound, the ticking sound, is injector 1 slow toggling. So when you've finished, obviously, so what that means is that the ECU is telling the injector to switch on and off, which is not what it normally does. Normally it obviously comes on for a split second to inject fuel into that cylinder, but in this test mode we can actually get an audible impression of what's actually working and what isn't. So let's put that back to injector number 1. If I can find injector number 1, there it is, injector 1. So the ticking has stopped, and we can do the same thing with, let's say, injector number 3, test with a slow toggle, tick, tock, tick. It's quite quiet, you may be able to hear it, maybe not. Anyway, you get the idea. And don't forget to put it back to injector number 3. Right, so the ticking stops. But what I noticed, and this is important, what I noticed is that all the cylinders worked in that fashion, apart from cylinder number 4, which is the front one on the left hand side bank of the V6. Could I get it to do anything? No, I couldn't. After repeatedly trying, and I had to investigate the wiring. Now the wiring on that cylinder has actually been repaired because it accidentally got cut at an earlier stage, so of course I suspected that, but after buzzing everything through, that's the term for connecting through from one end of the plug to the far end via all the connections, just to see if there is one, using a multimeter. It was connected through, but, and this is the important point, there was a different type of wiring fault. It was actually a short circuit. So, short circuit, why did that happen? Now, let's see if I can show you this. I'll put you down for a second. Now, rightly or wrongly, one of the approaches I took to wiring this engine was to use the Jaguar engine harness, which plugs in at various points. Let me give you some more light. That plugs in at various points using all the standard connectors, and that results in the use of a 60-way plug, which is kind of square, which in my installation sits just up in there. Can you see it? That's the what I call the big plug, 60-pin connector, which normally goes off into the Jaguar loom, and some of you might recognise that as being the same as used on various Fords. But this results, and this is the downside. Good side is I don't have to work too much with the engine wiring, but it does result in this thing. Let's open my glove box. So this is the other side of the same plug, and all those green wires you can see are soldered onto the pins which previously were in the Jaguar ECU, and they're all very close together. So what happened was a solder bridge between two of those pins, which was in fact between cylinder number 4, which is this one, and the VVT valve itself, which coincidentally is right next to it in reality, but also on that big plug. So what does this mean? So what it means is, it's a blinking wonder that the engine was running at all on what appeared to be 6 cylinders. It was in fact the same cylinder that I was using to get the spark plug out to look at the colour of it, if you remember me doing that, to get a sort of traditional view of the mixture that was running. So same cylinder. So with the fuel injector being shorted to the VVT valve, how can it possibly have been injecting? So I'm left with a couple of alternative situations that might have existed. One is that it was only ever running on 5 cylinders, and I don't think so, because I did look at the spark plug and I would have noticed that surely. Maybe the VVT plug wasn't plugged in properly. That's possible, I suppose. Or maybe since the VVT was not activated in the software, maybe it kind of ran anyway. And that last scenario that I'm thinking of, is it possible that the injection driver was also partially actuating the VVT without me knowing? It's an interesting concept, isn't it? What the heck? Is it possible the injection driver was partially operating the VVT on the bank number 2? I think it's actually slightly more likely that that was the case than that the VVT plug just coincidentally wasn't plugged in properly. But it's kind of bizarre, isn't it? So just for completeness, I'll also do the same test. So going back to the diagnostic thing, these are test modes are really really useful actually. And having tested all the cylinders, as I have done, one of the other things you can do, of course, I'll switch the thing back on again, is to test the VVT valve. So here we have the VVT valves, which are another input, or output rather. I'll turn you around. Another output on the same screen. So we have 2 VVTs, A and B, and we can test them as well. So VVT B solenoid 1, and if we choose that slow toggle thing again, and that's a louder noise now, but that is actually the VVT valve working. I'm sure you can hear that. So I could, and in fact I would say very likely it would be a good idea when doing let's say difficult wiring, it would be a good idea to do this type of test. Although I didn't do it, so don't do as I did, do as I say. I didn't do this test. I did the injector test, but I didn't do the VVT valve test, which presumably wouldn't have worked either, since it was shorted. But anyway, back to VVT B solenoid 1. Missed B solenoid 1. So everything should be as it should be now, but I'm left with that intriguing thought that the injection driver, was it actually firing up via PWM the camshaft VVT on that bank. So what does this all mean? I mean, again, it's a wonder that it was ever running on 6, but it seems pretty likely that the tuning map which has been achieved up until this point is going to be all over the place. and we've had partial cam advance and one cylinder not working properly. That's going to mess everything right up shortly. So I'm going to have to go back a step, I think. But okay, so let's see if it actually still runs. Well, I know it does, but it's not as as smooth as it was. And maybe, ouch! Banged my knee on the door. Oh. Oh. Right. Anyway, let's see how it runs at this very moment. Considering everything that I've said, it's not too bad. But it could be better. Well, I've spent some time fiddling with the map, and you might even better tell, maybe in the audio, that it's running a lot more smoothly now. I've learned a few things about the tuning here. It's got this slightly mysterious concept called VE, which, as I said a little while ago, is a measure of how full the cylinders get under any given condition compared to how full they could be. So 100% would be like throttle wide open, there's no problem with filling the cylinders at all, the engine's not going too fast, and so on and so on. And what I've learnt is that that applies basically to the air, and therefore considering that it's trying to achieve an AFR around about 14.7, the algorithm then decides on the basis of how much air is in there, how much fuel to put in, and by fiddling with the amount of the percentage fullness, the VE, of the map, it will work out how much fuel to put in accordingly to make it approximately 14.7. And what I've had to do in the last few minutes is to reduce the figures of fullness. This is idle speed, although it strangely seems to be running a bit high. I'll come back to that. I've reduced the fullness, the VE, a lot because the AFR was too low, and you can certainly tell because it was making my eyes sting in here in the garage, and now it's not. So this has transformed the map quite a lot. Of course, the auto tuning will transform it some more, but only within a limited amount of parameters. So what I've been doing here is on top, and now the engine is certainly running a lot cleaner than it was before. Well, after some fiddling, of course, all at idle speed. I don't know why it's idling quite so fast as it is, but let's not worry about that for the moment. What I'm worried about is the lambda AFR figure, which is showing a pretty consistent 14.7-ish. And basically I need to let the auto tune do its thing from here on. So I think the only thing I need to do now is take it out for another drive. Let's see what happens. I changed. Hello, Jessica. Lie down. Right, so let's go out for another little test drive then and see what happens. The wipers often do that. And we're going to set some logging up, I think. gearbox is fine, that's important. I've got a bit of a ground clearance problem still. I think I know what the solution to that is. Say that was pretty smooth. I actually enjoyed the drive as much as testing. Let's see if I can get it to go into reverse. Yes. If you got as far as this, thanks very much for watching, and in case you haven't already, please do consider subscribing.